Welcome to the episode of Free Thinkers Anonymous. Today we're going to talk about the Los Angeles election. We got Donald here to help give us some insight. He's always on the daily grind on his local station, giving feedback on that. So we're going to pick his brain a little bit. I know he's kind of tired. He's had a long day, but we're going to try to do our best to power through this and see if we can talk a bit more about what voters should be looking at and taking into consideration while casting their votes. And have a part-time Senate position, just filling out the current term, which would wrap up January 3rd of 2025. And we got a full-time Senate position is going to start January 3rd of 2025.
hmm
So we got two Senate seats. That's very important with what's going on. And even more important, something that might take up this entire conversation is Proposition 1, which is more affordable housing. See how people feel about that.
Yeah.
That might be our first poll. How do people feel about affordable housing in Los Angeles, in California? And we also got maybe some changes people are actually looking forward to, some changes that people might be against. So we'll definitely unpack that and get Donald's insights on that. I think I want to do more research on the candidates, to be honest. Kind of have an idea of who these people are. Like Adam Schiff is probably the biggest one, Barbara Lee, which I think is going to get a lot of attention. Because I think those are the big ones that we can probably already start talking about.
I think Christina Pasucci's also running, who's a TV news anchor. I think she was recently working at Fox 11. I remember seeing her on KTLA 5, and then she went to Fox 11, and I think now she's just running. I don't know if she still worked her day job. Probably not.
And the other one who I think is a big name that I've already seen smear campaigns on, so I know he's a threat to the Democrats, is Steve Garvey.
I want to say I've heard of him. I want to say I've heard of him.
He's a former Dodger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I was like, why do I feel like I know that name? Adam Schiff, I think that's the first one that stuck out to me, like as like the most obvious probably choice. I don't know. I feel like he's gonna get that easy. I know, there's time right now, but I just don't see like any bigger name. I mean, he made a big name for himself during the Trump presidency, like as like one of the few Democrats trying to like really be contentious with Trump's term. And I believe he's from Burbank, so not too far from us. I think he has it easy, to be honest. I think like this isn't going to be a stretch for him to win the Senate. And then Katie Porter, I remember hearing her as well. Not too familiar with her as all. That's the thing. I think right now with the way California is running, I think you're gonna have to be Democrat. I know that we live in a state that is mainly blue, and I know that there's some people who vote red, and I think they're very hopeful that somehow the state will eventually flip for some reason, but I just feel like it's just way too blue to ever do that. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger being a governor was just, lightning in a bottle as a Republican governor.
Mm.
I think moving forward, I think most of the seats, Senate, governor seats, even the mayors too, like I think they're gonna have to, unless you're in like Central California, but most mayors in most parts of California would have to be more leaning towards the Democratic Party. I was surprised with Pasucci running as a Democrat because she came from Fox 11.
Mm.
Oh, I heard that she was running, but then I was like, oh, she's probably gonna run as a Republican. But then she put herself as a Democrat, and I was just like, oh, okay, like that's crazy. But I wonder if it's more of an appeal to California. I mean, I'm sure she could play both sides if she wanted to, like anybody could.
Mm.
She probably felt like, well, let me not come across like something that would be a turnoff to people. But I don't know what she would do because I only know her as a news anchor. So I don't know. I think that's why Schiff's like, such an obvious choice. He has the experience, and I think that's what you're gonna want. And I believe this is for Feinstein seat, right?
Yeah, he's the one who had to step down, right? Um,
Well, Dianne Feinstein, I think, passed away.
oh, my bad. Yeah, this is how well I follow
Yeah,
politics, but that's right. I just remember that vacant seat being a huge talking point.
yeah,
To think that with Trump, potentially running for office and trying to get back in there for California, at least having two open Senate seats at the same time, that's a huge deal.
yeah. No, it is. I mean, I don't think we've had that in a while. I mean, Feinstein had held that on till she passed away, and I forgot who the other guy senator was. I don't know if it was Padilla. I know the other guy was a fill-in too. That's why they're both available now. Because the
Mm.
other guy was like a interim from someone stepping down, and then the other person filled in that's taking over for Feinstein. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, but I honestly feel like they're gonna both be Democrats, and yeah, just because of the Trump threat, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a knee-jerk reaction vote for sure. It's not going to be a whole lot of thought going into it. It's going to be what they feel most secure about.
Yeah, Exactly.
which is why I think based on the current trend with our current mayor, I think Barbara Lee have a good shot. Maybe she put down that she wrote the California's first Violence versus Women Act, so that's huge.
Hmm. That's huge.
To have a woman
Yeah.
speaking out of the fact that she came from an abusive marriage, got out of
Yeah.
that, raised her kids on her own, and
Yeah.
now she's working very hard for women's rights. I mean, I think that's going to be a huge thing. We all know the quote. We're not going to say it, but we know what Trump said.
Yeah.
Put on repeat for way too long. But just that going to be being pumping the airways again.
Oh yeah.
A woman who's advocating for women's rights is definitely going to be high up on the ballot and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
very anti-war as well. So with everything
Hmm.
going on, I think a lot of people are going to be looking at her and thinking, everyone likes to do that. Oh, I said no of Afghanistan. I said no about Iraq. And the fact that she gets to, really tote that as high on her resume, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that Barbara Lee being the other one. Yeah.
And just to kind of highlight, it's great to nominate these senators, but it's also important to realize they're looking at the overall bigger picture of generally what does California need as a whole.
Yeah.
They're not really focused on your specific community or district. That's your local city government. And it's important to kind of know who those people are, your local mayor is, know, yeah, who's in charge of your district, and yeah, reach out. You can reach these people. You can call, you can write letters, and you can express your concerns. You can sign petitions. If enough people sign a petition, then you can take that, and then they're going to actually give it more consideration once you
Yeah.
see how many
Yeah.
people are affected by a decision.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of what we're getting to. Like the senator vote is important. Look into these people who clicks
Hmm.
with you. Like I know there was a more like a civil rights activist type of person running for Senate. That's really important to you. Like she was out there. Let me just get her name real quick. Just because, that may be someone that you find interesting and that resonates with you, and you should vote for a candidate that really speaks to you personally. Laura Garza.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was out there with with the strikes for the actors, for the writers.
Yeah. Yeah. SAG-AFTRA. BGA.
Yeah, anytime there's a cause, she's there. Auto workers, hospital workers, people worked in hotels and schools. So if you really care about someone who's going to always fight for a cause, that's someone you may want to consider voting for.
Yeah, for sure.
Here we're a little bit more left leaning, but I'm not going to rule it out. If you're a hardcore MAGA guy, there's a candidate running right now in California who fits that bill. Even though San Francisco and Los Angeles are kind of the core reasons as to why California is even a blue state to begin with, because those are very densely populated cities and also a lot of cultural diversity, which also I think helps propel things to be more liberal. Just
Hmm.
exposure to different things. That's kind of, our take sometimes. Yeah, man, you got Eric Early.
Oh, I've heard that name. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I've heard that name before.
If you bleed red, dude, you care about your gun rights, and
Yeah.
you feel things are getting too woke. You got Eric Early to represent you.
Anti-vaxxers, you have a guy in there.
Yeah, man. So you got people out there who could represent you, and
Yeah.
we're big proponents of mix things up and have different people have different perspectives to have a more nuanced conversation. But most important, people who actually want to have a conversation. Let's stop voting
Exactly.
for people who go in there and just sit in their ways.
Yeah.
And it's like the highway, and it's like, yo, but we got to pass things. Like, even if it's not great, like the current prop, there's stuff that we don't agree with. For the most part, we feel like it's trying to address a lot of the
Yeah.
issues. Let's do that. But they claim to have a very strong audit system. If a lot of us want to vote for that prop to pass, and we should hold them accountable, show us the receipts.
Hmm.
If you want to make sure that the money is being spent the way it's supposed to be spent, and that would put a lot of us at ease. I think
Very true.
really want transparency. Those who grown up in the social media era, I think a lot of us feel as if people try to be more genuine, try to show you more of what's going on behind the scenes. We want, as much transparency as possible. I think that's the bottom line of what we're gonna should ask for our candidates, and why, we gotta, we're gonna see if there's any outreach programs or anything out there that makes engaging and following what's going on more interesting and exciting. We're definitely going to do our part to try to find and connect with people like that so that we can help increase the engagement.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of people out there who are hoping that we engage less with our officials, who are more turned off by what's going
Yeah.
on, and we should be doing the opposite. We should be putting more of an effort and emphasis on being plugged in.
Yeah. Very true, man. And now it's easy to vote. They mail it to your house now, so you don't even have to go to a polling place. All you have to do is get informed. That's it. and just go out and vote. I mean, look at what happened with the mayor's race too. We had Rick Caruso and Karen Bass, and Caruso had to flip parties to get some leverage.
Hmm.
Of course, LA didn't fall for it, right? They were like, no, no, no. Like, dude, he had to do what he had to do to kind of get an edge. And it was close. I remember he was ahead in the beginning when the polls closed. And then I remember we found out what, like about a week later that Bass won it or something because it was just so close. And then she edged them out at the end of it all. And it was just kind of crazy to think that like we almost was about to have another, wealthy millionaire, billionaire person running our city as if it was like the country that we had in 2016. So it's like, I think it was more that, like just the imaging of it all, like some corporate guy. I don't know if the homelessness thing would have been something that he would have really tackled in the same manner that Karen Bass is trying to tackle it.
Hmm.
And I know she's got on another plate, and like you said earlier, Prop One is going to be a big part of that because Prop One is going to be the state taking funds from mental health services and putting them into a homeless, housing. And it's kind of tricky, man, that they put us in these positions as citizens.
Hmm.
Because to think that it's like I have to vote whether someone gets mental health services or take the homeless guy off the street. And there might be some homeless people who are actual mental health people as well. And it's like, do you give them meds or do you give them a place to stay? And I just think it's rough that we're gonna have to go and choose that on March 5th. But I know that the housing thing is like a bigger conversation because we're seeing the effects of it here in LA, right? On one end, we're seeing gentrification happen, right? Silver Lake is not what it used to be. Echo Park doesn't look the way it used to be. Highland Park does not look the way it used to be. Boyle Heights is changing. All these neighborhoods are changing. LA Live completely redid downtown LA.
Hmm.
I could see that kind of bleeding into the Pico Union area where in a couple years from now it'll feel different. Same thing with MacArthur Park. I did see that there's some new buildings in MacArthur Park area right there in Westlake.
Hmm.
And I'm kind of like, yo, I know these are new like apartment buildings, but it feels weird to see it in the middle of like stuff that still looks like it's been here for decades. And it's kind of a weird mixture. I get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, too, there's just so many variables that are happening right now.
Hmm.
Gentrification being one. All the housing's going up. Like people can't afford houses anymore in LA. People have to go out Riverside or go to like Palmdale, even get something at like half a mil at like the lowest point. And then on top of that, like people that do live in the city, the rent's crazy high. And depending on where you land with your income, you might qualify for a low income building. You might not. They're not really building a lot of low income building fast enough. But then at the same time, too, they're building low income buildings in neighborhoods that they're disrupting. It's very
Hmm.
convoluted.
It's very destructive, and it's very much we need a fast solution now, so let's just jump on it.
Yeah.
And that's something, the more I kept looking at the bill that bothered me when they bring up the issue of the bonds, right? Like, okay, we're going to take
Yeah.
out this loan for 6 billion to pump more into trying to address this problem, but it's going to take 30 years to pay off.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking to yourself, okay, and you start looking at a current debt where there's already 80 billion in debt for the state so far in trying to
Mm-hmm.
pay back bonds.
Yeah.
So the fact that we just keep borrowing money to try to fix this problem, I love how they have the pros and cons
Yeah.
in the summaries, and I like how
Mm-hmm.
they brought up the whole. Who doesn't remember that one time California was bragging that we had a surplus of 100 billion expected to come in that they were going to then spend on whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, that surplus, I did some research and it turned out to be roughly just 20 billion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't even get all that extra money, but still, we're always taught to save, to budget, and to figure out how to spend our money. And then we have our state where they were talking about how
Yeah.
Sacramento, they spent 20 billion over the past 5 years trying to focus it towards this issue. But then the auditor is struggling to figure out where billions has gone.
Yeah.
So they have these state governments that struggle to figure out where they're budgeting, where they're spending the money. So once you start really looking at it, are the people that we're electing and putting in charge actually allocating the funds where they need to go? Are we properly budgeting to fix this issue and this crisis? Like maybe we should be cutting other areas temporarily and using that way of budgeting to pay for facilities to treat people with mental health problems, different drug or alcohol addiction. That's great.
Yeah.
When they highlight the fact that so many of those closed during the 60s and 70s. That helped add to the homeless problem over time. But I can't help but think, why do we have a sudden huge influx of homeless ever since the lockdowns? Like that kind of doesn't add up. Like, yes, we put in all these protections to
Yeah.
help people keep their rental and not be kicked out. So that
Yeah.
should have stopped the homeless problem. So then why do we have so many homeless people now as compared to before the lockdowns? It's like the math ain't math, I still feel as if we're trying to address this problem that's like a epidemic of its own.
Hmm. No, and it's true. I mean, and the thing, I don't know if you remember, a couple years back, we had to vote on another prop to raise sales tax so that can supposedly go to homeless housing and stuff. There's money for this type of situation, and now we're voting on maybe taking the money away from mental health services to fix the same problem. Yeah, to your point, the mathing, man. Like, how much money do you guys really need to have this done? And honestly, 6 billion doesn't seem like a lot for how much all this stuff would cost to build any sort of facility to have people living in. 6 billion seems really little. And I just think unless like somehow they're doing them for like a million each, like a building or something, but I don't know, man. I feel like construction price has gone up since the pandemic because of shortage and all that stuff. So I don't know. Obviously we're just trying to figure out what would make the city the easiest way to live in, but it's just interesting that this is where we're at now. This is a crossroads.
Yeah, it's definitely a stopgap measure because, you just have the general consensus. Okay, what is this prop? Okay, this is about
Hmm.
working more towards dealing with the homeless issue. Okay, but now we're going to pivot and now we're going to take a different approach. Cool. Because I know that's the conversation I would have with people is the fact that, well, what leads you to becoming homeless? Okay, that's part of the conversation now. Excellent. I love that aspect of the prop, right? Let's talk about the
Yeah.
fact that people have mental problems. Of course they do. That's why we need more facilities to help figure out what is their personal issue.
Hmm.
Always going to be different. One-on-one consultation. You can't just, we're just going to prescribe this new drug that's being pumped by Pfizer?
No, of course. Yeah, because then Pfizer's making money at that point.
Yeah, yeah, it's just pure money profit for them.
They're getting a kickback.
Exactly. It's about, okay, we actually need to cater to each person's individual needs. So you're going to need more workers that deal with people with mental health issues. And some of them have drug addiction problems. Some of them have alcohol problems, and that can increase and exacerbate and make it more of a problem, whatever mental health issue they have.
Yeah.
I noticed that with people fighting addiction, whatever little peeve they have, and maybe they can't talk to themselves, maybe they get easily flustered or angry about stuff, it just multiplies tenfold if they're under a substance abuse.
Yeah.
And then I like the fact that there's a preventative aspect of the prop that's being applied as well,
Yeah.
trying to deal with people who are developing addiction problems. So before you even end up on the street, hey, we're going to provide services so you can reach out and they'll help you deal with your addiction before it gets out of hand. That's great. Like every time you see rehab in a movies, it's always this really nice looking facility, and that's hella expensive.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. That's just yeah, that's the thing too, that there's a huge cost in the medical facility, like it just in anything medical, right? Like Cedar Sinai is definitely a better facility than LA General Hospital for almost day and night because of the fact that one is located in a certain part of the city and has a certain financial backing, and the other one is, the government funded one that is located in another part of the city, and there's just only a certain amount of people that can get treated there, and only a certain amount of people get treated at the other place has a more exclusivity to it. And it's crazy to think that even in something like this, there's like a classism to it. And that's the thing that sucks. You wish that it would just be point blank, we're just trying to fix mental health here. But to your point, the whole drug prescription stuff that plays into it at some point. Then you see these companies get kickbacks. And then before you know it, you don't know what this stuff does. I mean, we just came from a whole fentanyl thing with finding out that Sackler family making billions of dollars while people are overdosing on opioids and stuff. So sad, you know what I mean? And right now Ozempic's the thing, right? Because people want to lose weight, so they're using like, a diabetic drug to like lose weight. Insane how our society sometimes maneuvers to treat themselves and in their health. And I think that like all that stuff just plays into it little by little. I think it chomps away at it. You can get mental health stuff from the city or whoever provides it. It's probably gonna be just very, okay, cool, bye, thank you. Here's your stuff. Mosey along. While other people have problems and they can afford a better sort of rehabilitation process and they're actually getting treated and they actually are seeing like therapists. They are actually trying to figure out what's going on. Because what if it is just depression or anxiety? Or what if it is just, hey, I lost my job. Now I don't have a place to stay. You know what I mean? And then there's other people who have mental problems because they have real deep rooted mental issues like schizophrenia. And it's hard to be around people like that.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't have a place to put them in where they're going to be treated right and taken care of and kind of be looked after for however long people live.
Hmm.
It's just kind of weird that we have them all on the streets and then it just creates a huge domino effect of just one to the other. I mean, we see encampments everywhere, man. I'm sure you have homeless people that are kind of like your neighbors now at this point, you know? It's just kind of like that, you know what I mean? And I know we were going to talk about this whole situation with the city and what's going on because I know that like it plays into the economics, it plays into just socially how we're going to interact, things like that. I mean, it could go into anything. I mean, if you think about it, it can even go into family planning.
Mm.
A lot of millennials don't have as much kids as other generations. And I think if you're living in LA and you're going through this whole situation of just seeing how much the city's getting so expensive, I could see why you're like, you know what, I don't think I can have children right now. The economic cost to it. And then you probably feel like if I do have a family, it's probably not going to be here in LA. This whole thing
Yeah.
factors in the mathematics of it all. It's just one of those things where it's like, it's crazy to think that's where we've gone as a city, where people can't live the life that they want to live. Most people just want to be left alone. You know what I mean? I want to just be able to go to my job, collect my check, pay my bills, take care of my family, and that's it. And it's crazy how this city has kind of suffocated a lot of that out of it.
Yeah, I think that's why I definitely want to do like feature segment talking about people who have left LA and California.
Yeah.
I definitely want to see if we could get some testimonials of people coming on,
Yeah.
or maybe just, some of the friends I have just share their stories with me, and then we just like kind of go over it, just to summarize their experiences.
Yeah, no, for sure, dude. That'd be great. There's real reasons why people leave. It's not just because like some people felt like they got driven out of the city.
Yeah.
I have cousins who live in Seattle and they're like, yeah, like LA's too much. We can't do it. Seattle pays me more money and I get to live in a different environment and it's not LA and it's not congested and it's not expensive. Yeah, and you have a home.
A great environment to raise a family in, and that's huge for people is to have that. It sucks that people always have to go back to this idea of, oh, let's, have that American dream and how it's becoming more and more of just a fantasy and not a reality, not something you can really build and have for yourself. And people are conflicted about that.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere someone saying that they're seeing that there's this trend happening with the younger generation, like Gen Z and below, where I think they're slowly going to give up on home buying and just be like, hey, the money I would have saved for a down payment, we're just going to go
Mm,
travel. Why am I going to try to save up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000? Let's just go wherever we want all over the world and experience that.
mhm.
Yeah, just because it just feels like renting is starting to become more and more normalized and more, not just normalized, but it's becoming more accepted in society now, where it's like, yeah, that's what we do, you know? Just think that plays into it. Like Airbnb is one of the companies I think of. The fact that you just kind of like pay somebody to say, hey, I'm gonna stay at your place for a while, you know what I mean? And it's like, but you don't own the place, you're just renting it in the moment, you know? And I think for now, it's just a very eventful thing to do in Airbnb, right? It's mostly like a vacation thing. Like, hey, I'm going to Big Bear and I'm getting an Airbnb so I can have a place to stay versus going to the hotel, right? But what's to say in the future that just doesn't become the normal thing that you do where you just rent somewhere, you kind of borrow a place or something, you know what I mean? And places become, there's a system that works for it all. And then I don't know. I just read someone saying younger generation it feels like they could easily give up on the whole buying a home thing because it's a tedious process. You have to come up with a lot of money. You have to have great credit. There's just all these hoops you have to go through. And then on top of that, it's super expensive to get a home. So let's just enjoy life and go travel.
Yeah, I don't blame people. I think there's always been this trend people want to travel, YOLO, you only live once, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just really get the most out of it instead of waiting for retirement. There's so much energy that people have these days. I don't know if it's because people have less attention spans.
Yeah.
I think once you just focus intensely in one thing, that you also want to just kind of get more out of life in general. So I think that's something that's going to be an ongoing trend, especially because there's certain groups that want to unplug. That's one of the reasons why my buddy left is because he wants to unplug from technology, wants to unplug from being in these very dense, high energy social interactions. It's like, yo, man, I just want to be able to just go out in nature. I want to be able to hike. I want to be able to just chill, go at my own pace, do my own thing. There's so much that we're losing sight of. You talked about the family and how that's kind of diluting. And I know later on we're going to go into whether we think that's intentional or not as a whole for society to more and more devalue the family and the home and what that solid structure looks like, especially seeing systems like this, which it almost seems like a more like a symptom.
Yeah.
I was very much reliant on, okay, how's the government going to fix this and fix that? And I keep looking at it. I think, like, yo, man, this got to be some sort of community level approach to fixing this issue, a district, a city, and then a state. I think
Hmm.
this is going to be a very interesting vote, depending on whether or not people want to put more focus on the local level and see how we can figure this out on a local level, or
Yeah.
are we really just going to have the state run things? And again, I got to go back through that 70-page breakdown of what the whole prop is. But as I was flipping through it, man, I saw one thing come up constantly, and that was Medi-Cal. And I thought, oh, heck no.
Yeah.
I have a family member that's been on Medi-Cal. Times have been hard. And now I'm on Medi-Cal temporarily. And it's not a good system. You're on the phone for hours trying to reach anybody. And I know there's some people arguing against the prop, right? That say, well, we got to
Yeah.
focus on all the current systems that we have. But if you're someone with a psychiatric issue or mental health problem, in order to get your first consultation, you'll be waiting up to 6 months currently. That's what I read.
Yeah. That's true, man.
We have local systems, but is that even working? And I think it's more of management. Hearing us talk about things, mismanagement is going to be a constant topic that's going to come up,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I think a lot of times we see a problem and we want someone else to deal with the problem.
Yeah.
Who can I call? Who can I just lay this off to and say, hey, you take care of it now? And we don't do follow-up. I think a big thing with politicians is that they're civil servants. They are meant to serve the public. They're meant to serve public interests. I think we had a conversation with this before, right? Where it's like you like
Yeah.
these guys to try to figure out the problem before it even becomes a problem. You want them to step in and figure things out for you. This is their job. They're here to help figure out things before they become a huge issue to where we're aware of it.
Yeah.
Wait for us to call it out and say, hey, we want you to address these issues. And that's why this prop is actually a big deal.
Just like not even the local level, from your block, your neighborhood, things that are changing, right? Like businesses are not the same anymore. And then on top of that, there's a lot of new stuff coming in. You kind of don't know how beneficial it is to people. You want to take their word for it. Obviously, especially with these buildings, these are all like corporation development buildings. These are developers. And it's kind of interesting because it all plays into it. There's a lot to unpack with what's happening with the city of LA. It's not easy living in this city right now. Everything's gone up, gas has gone up, groceries gone up. The medical thing is a pain in the ass. Even for me, I have insurance through my job. It's not the state insurance. I remember now that you were talking about appointments, I went to a location because I tried calling them and they never answered. And I was thinking in my head, I should get a primary care doctor just to have like someone that I can go to if anything, right? And then I try to call this place that takes my insurance. They don't answer the phone. I go online and they said, hey, like, would you want to kind of be a new patient sign up? I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, I could do that. And then they had me filling out the form online. And then they're like, when can do an appointment? And I put the day. They don't tell you the time or what's available. They just say, like, give us like a round out what day, like a Friday morning, a Friday afternoon. So then I'm like, all right, Friday morning sounds fine. I never got a follow up after that. And then when can I schedule my appointment? And they never hit me up at all. Days happened and they were nearby. I visited them and then like we have your info here. And I was like, yeah, I just need to schedule an appointment. It'll be my first time having a doctor. So I just want to do the annual checkup. And they're like, okay. And then the receptionist tells me, okay, so the nearest day and time to do it is March 15th at like 9 in the morning or something. Yeah, this was a couple of days ago, February 9th or 10th or something like that. And I'm just like, wow, like a month from now that I can actually see somebody? That's a long time, man. Like, that's just odd. I get that people are busy and they have things booked like that, but that's a really long time to be waiting for your starter checkup. But with that, I realized this is why Amazon and all these tech companies are moving in on like telehealth. For as much as it's gonna suck for the medical facilities, at the end of the day, something had to happen to disrupt what you guys are doing, because I signed up for One Medical, right? And it's owned by Amazon. So because they're owned by Amazon, you have Prime membership. I think they're only charging me like $9 a month for it. I signed up. Okay, like these are the available appointments and it's up to date. And I could literally choose somebody later this week. I could choose someone next week after that, whenever there's someone available Monday through Friday and there's slots available. Obviously, I would have to ask for like time off and all that if I'm going to do it somewhere in the middle of the day. I could see someone on Friday. I could see someone like next Tuesday, next Wednesday. That's crazy. So this is where I realized like this is where the disruption is going to happen with the medical industry. There's just too much work around that needs to be for like basic standard healthcare that I pay for as an insurance holder.
No, for sure, man. Pull some numbers real quick. So currently the stat is that there are 171,500 people who are experiencing homeless right now in California. And a lot of the housing initiatives would house, they're saying the new facilities they plan to build would just is for 4,350 people.
That's interesting. Yeah, they say San Francisco has a huge homeless problem.
But the good thing about the bill, which I do respect, is the fact that they want to spend a lot of money towards veterans.
Yeah, that's good.
And of these housing units that they want to build, out of those 4,350, like 2,350 was be set aside for veterans.
Oh, that's good, man.
So the veterans get a huge leg up with the revisions, but then you notice, like we were talking earlier about appointments, right? That they're saying
Yeah,
with the current facilities as they stand, they would have to be able to treat an additional 10,000 patients at any given time.
yeah.
With the current facilities that we have, which is never going to happen, so unrealistic. But with the new initiative, they plan to increase that number to an additional 6,800 people who could be seen at any time, which is just a little over half of meeting the demand that needs to be met. So
Mm.
even with all that money spent, like, you mentioned that 6 billion, does that really
Yeah,
cover it enough? No, it doesn't. You're still going to have a ton of people who's still not going to have housing, but you would be getting closer to treating more of the people who need treatment, but still doesn't cover everyone. So it's this huge thing of it's a stepping stone. It adds more help. Is it still what we really need to have? Could we do something better?
yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Very difficult with the whole thing. That's why I know some people right away voted yes on it. And I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not sure. I still need to do more research.
Yeah,
And I encourage other people to do their due diligence and really look into it and really kind of think, are there programs, are there initiatives that people can get involved with? Is it possible for us to have another solution? And it's difficult.
yeah. No, it is.
It requires everyone to be involved in some capacity. And at the moment, we don't have enough public interest to really get involved because everyone's struggling still. Everyone's trying to focus on what's going to be best for them. And I think that's so difficult when these props come up and people want to jump on them, like, oh, it's saying the right things. I want to just vote for it. But then
Yeah.
I think there needs to be almost like a negotiation. I wish that we could have that, if we can have our own representatives that can speak with their own council people, right? These are the people who should be representing us and think of our best interests. But I
Hmm.
almost wish there was like local communities and they would meet with these guys and craft these props and think of like, well, what's good? Of course, that would be a lengthy process and we'll see how that would even go. But I think just to have a collective of like, okay, this is our vote. This is what we want to say. Because politicians do this all the time when they pass their bills. They get to put in, well, okay, you're going to do this, but what about if we get something out of it too? Or how does that really benefit our specific community? So when we have this conversation of, well, local versus government versus state governments, like, well, are you even involved
Hmm.
with your local government? Are you actually under these state programs to know if they're actually good or not? There's so much that people need to have a little bit more awareness, care to be more engaged and involved. And I think we go back to a huge talking point that conservatives always pull from, but I always find it disappointing when I don't hear liberals use the same talking point, which is family, which is having a good sense of community,
Yeah.
have that strong foundation of we can lean on one another to
Yeah.
really figure out what's best for us. And we can also be a little bit self-reliant. I think on the liberal end, we're depending so much on, well, just make the state and the federal bigger. That'll solve our issues. And it's like, well, how much of accountability do we have? And what help do we actually need? Instead of saying,
Yeah.
like, well, just, we're going to have a deus ex machina, the heavens will part, the God rays will descend, and everything's going to be better. It's tough, man. It's really tough. And I think it's important for people to just engage more and be interested in the engagement. I think that's what I kind of want with this kind of conversation, just to kind of highlight for people is that, I'm not saying this is good or a bad prop, but I'm saying that how much of it are we really looking at and analyzing?
Hmm.
I wish we can give that feedback. Instead, it's just like, here's this thing, vote for it. Yes or no.
Yeah, that's very true, man. I think that's what's missing is having that discourse. I mean, it benefits whoever writes these things to just weigh them to like vote yes or no based on their interest and just kind of keep the people ignorant. But yeah, people should really look into what it all means. People should know who their local councilman is. I think I'm in Eunices Hernandez's district. You have to know who these people are. You can talk to them. They have field offices. Call them up and be like, hey, I just wanted to let you know this is how I feel about where I'm at right now. And this is what I think is something you guys should look into. Because, yeah, then what ends up happening is politicians eventually grow more and more disconnected from the communities they're supposed to serve, right? Like you said, there's all these state programs. I'm pretty sure I can guess that none of these big politicians in our state are into it. And I'm talking about the Adam Schiffs, of our state. I mean, I highly doubt Adam Schiff's on Medi-Cal. Things like that do make you feel like, okay, do you understand how difficult it is for a lot of people to get by if you're not in the system the way they are? I think that's the sad part about it. It's kind of like right now I'm thinking about like Gavin Newsom, how much he's liked and stuff. But then when I see him, he just looks so put together that I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you know what struggle is, man. It's really tough. But then he is the guy that is leading California and is really trying to fight against the MAGA crowd, and he's the defense of it. But then on the other end, yeah, bro, like you kind of give me like some Kennedy type vibes, man, where like this is all set up for you to like succeed and stuff. And I don't know if you know what struggling really is. The paycheck to paycheck life was just never your life. It's tough. There's a disconnect for sure. Prop one's not the perfect solution, but it is something that's being presented. I still have to make my decision on whether I'm going to vote yes or no, but like I will be voting because it's my civic duty. It's something that matters to me. I know when it comes to presidents, it's like whatever, it's electoral, and there's all this other stuff that, especially like if you vote in California, you're going to go to the Democratic candidate, whoever that is, in any term or any election year. I think from the local level, we really should know what's happening and why these things exist and what does this mean and what does that mean. It's not fair to anybody to say everything just sucks because it sucks and then not realizing that, like, oh, that's right. It's maybe because you're not getting informed, maybe you're not getting involved, maybe you're not trying to see what can your councilman do, what anybody could do, what your city controller or whatever. And you have to do that. This is the city that you live in. And that's for anybody who lives in any area locally. If you're going to complain about your city, then at least do something that would make you realize, like, why are things happening the way they're happening? Because if you're not having that dialogue, if you're not communicating and you're not finding out, then you're just going to be frustrated.
Yeah, we want everyone to be active, be involved, be engaged, and to care. If you don't care, why should other people care that you're voting for to represent your interests if you're not interested? So we want people to, yeah, get out there and vote.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I think March 5th's creeping up really quick. So definitely go out and vote. If you got your mail-in ballot, look at it. It doesn't take long to just start circling the stuff that you want to circle and drop it off. And yeah, man, thank you so much for having me here, dude. And I'm definitely looking forward to the next time we chat and see how everything else progresses and just like whatever else you want to talk about, man. I know this is a Free Thinkers Anonymous. You know what I mean? It's all in everything.
Yeah, man, we're going to keep it pushing. So thanks everybody for listening and definitely tune in for the next one.